everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss movie-based games. So if you didn't see the last episode, I did what I always do now, where I have an idea, which was, video game adaptations into movies and TV shows, and then of course, as soon as I hop out of the car, I'm like, oh, the other side of the coin is an entirely new conversation. So I've been waiting to do this all day at work. I was like, man, I really want to talk about this because, there's two sides of the same coin. You have, of course, adaptations, which, as I talked about in the last video, have gotten a lot better in recent years compared to what we had before. However, there's always that interesting side of movie-based games. They were horrible. And unfortunately, I won't say unfortunately, but fortunately, we don't really get that at all anymore. I was thinking about it while I was at work, and I would love to know you guys' thoughts on it, but is that era just dead and gone at this point? There was some conversation, and this ties way back to, the WB video, but there was some talk where James Gunn was like, yeah, we'd love to do this, this, and this, and it ties in with the new DC movies coming out. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense because games take like 100 million years to make. Like, I know movies can take a minute, but games take way longer than movies do. And it definitely, unless you're doing just a tie-in thing, it has to be totally separate. It has to be like, its own little mini story within the universe, which they could still do. That's totally possible. But, we'll see what happens as they kind of rebuild that universe, or I should say just build it in general. But we haven't really had movie-based games in quite a long time. We don't really get that anymore. Even games based off of TV shows, I think is way more common, and for the most part, that's kid stuff. It'll be like, hey, Bluey has video games, Paw Patrol has video games. I don't even know why this was a thing, but on Twitch Prime, they had a code for a Smurfs video game, and it was the second one. It was Smurfs 2 something, 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 something. I was like, huh, how about that? So, there are definitely games still being made based on other properties, specifically, like TV shows, not so much the movies anymore. But it was definitely an interesting era. And of course, there's the ultimate, amalgamation of Street Fighter, the movie, the game. Of course, that's like a paradox within itself, like a snake eating its own tail. But we've definitely had a lot. Especially when it comes to superheroes, we've had so many things where it was either, mostly based on movies. Hey, Superman Returns has a game. Batman Begins has a game. I don't think they were really tied to the movies, but, of course, there are a lot of, games where it's like, it's the tie-in game. It's not really based on the movie, but it clearly, it was specifically made to come out. So it's kind of a weird in-between, because it's like, well, a movie-based game is like, obviously, X-Men Origins Wolverine, probably the best actual movie-based game, because, as everyone always says, that's actually a really good game for a really crappy movie, too. It's insane. Obviously, if you've seen the movie, you know how it is. But the game is phenomenal. It's so fun, honestly, and who the F knows when we'll see any news on it. But as far as Insomniac doing this Wolverine game, I'm like, all they have to do is just look at that old game and just do that. Sure, Wolverine leaps 20 feet in the air, but it goes full comic with it. It's like, sure, just do that. I don't care. It's fun. That game is super fun, and you have crazy special spin attacks and stuff that make no sense. He's spinning in a circle. It's like a cyclone move, and it's cool. I play Marvel vs. Capcom. He does ridiculous things that make no sense. He's making slash marks in midair. It's that doesn't make any sense. That's not really a part of his powers. It could make sense, but that's not a part of his powers. But they do it in Marvel vs. Capcom, and it looks sick. I love it. So sure, just do that and make it fun. So they've done things before where we've had video game movies, or movie-based games, where it's really good. And that only applies to, obviously, the X-Men Origins game. And then Spider-Man 1 is really good. And Spider-Man 2, of course, is the classic Spider-Man game where everyone's like, you make Spider-Man, you do it based off of this. Obviously, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, if you make Spider-Man, you do it now based off of the Insomniac games. But there's stuff in the Insomniac games that I think they added in the second one that was already in the old Spider-Man 2 game. But those properties, or those games, are some of the rare breed when it comes to movie tie-in games. You got the Iron Man games, and there was an old Hulk game. I remember playing that one, and then I think after that, Hulk Ultimate Destruction came out, which was phenomenal. Made by the same people, by the way. I think it was it Vivendi Studios back then? I can't really remember, but oddly enough, same company. They made the Hulk movie tie-in game, which was not that great, and then they were like, all right, let's do Hulk Ultimate Destruction, which is phenomenal. So, we've had some tie-ins, back in the day. Like I said, the comic book thing was really where it was at. If it wasn't a kid's thing, it was definitely the comic book movies. Like, it's not like they were like Eyes Wide Shut the video game, which would be buck wild, but we didn't really get that. Crazy stuff. Actually, now that I think about it, another tie-in, and this was, from a few episodes back, games I wish would make a return. The Warriors. That's a very unique circumstance, much like, Street Fighter, the movie, the game, like weird stuff like that. It's like an amalgamation where a lot of that game is technically custom stuff. Like they basically make an entire prequel to the movie. The movie is the end of the game. Like, you play through the stuff you already know, and that's like the last, maybe 2-3 hours of gameplay. But before all of that is like just brand new content that they created, where it of course has the characters from the film, but it's stuff that they did way before the movie happened. This like takes place like almost a full year before the movie, and then it kind of cuts through time, like a couple months at a time. So they made it based off of an old movie property, but then they added all of this new content, and it's like, well, so much of this game is original. It's almost weird. Like, obviously it's the tie-in, it's a movie-based game, literally, but it's so interesting where it's such a unique thing. And lots of games do that, of course, where it's tied into the movie, but obviously they have to add a buttload of stuff. But this is a movie that came out in 1979, if I remember right. They had I don't know, I still don't understand the story behind why they randomly were like, what if we got the Warriors, and they just made a game. But Rockstar did it, and I love that game. So I said it before, I say it again, please bring it back. Do like a full remake of that. That would be phenomenal, especially with graphics today. It'd be insane. But they did something special there, and it was like, hey, this is an old movie that we thought was really cool, and we wanted to add to the lore of this movie. Like, we love this movie. It's crazy. It's it fits within the Rockstar realm of situations where it's violent and it's gang wars and it's beating people up and stealing stuff. It fits in, and they did something unique there. And then of course you have like the X-Men games. You have, I think they started with X2, and that was one of those situations where it was like, this literally has nothing at all to do with the X-Men 2 movie, like in any way, shape, or form. Like, characters will show up, but it like the storyline is like not the same at all. Like, they just did it just because, and it was a fun game. It had some interesting mechanics. Another thing that, admittedly, if Insomniac was taking cues from the couple of Wolverine specific games out there, the stealth mechanics in that I actually thought were kind of cool. Like, they had some really cool stuff there where you would actually use his tracking abilities to follow people and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a neat mechanic. You could do like stealth kills if you were like pressed up against the wall and someone was around the corner. I never forget, he would do like a thing where he just pops around the corner and he just boom hits them like right under the chin and claws straight through the head, and then they're done. And that's like a stealth kill that he has, and it's like, oh, that's a pretty intense stealth kill when you think about it. But cool mechanics. But that was technically the X-Men 2 video game. And then another weird thing, once again, X-Men 3. It has literally nothing to do with the third X-Men movie. In fact, it's a prequel to the third X-Men movie. They literally explain why Nightcrawler isn't in the third movie in that game, but it's the X-Men 3 video game. And it's like, it's so weird, but that's how they did the tie-in. It was like they made a game that's literally a prequel to the film, which I think honestly probably would have made it so a little bit better, considering, especially how that movie turned out. I think that actually would have made that game sell a little better if it was like, hey, this is actually a story that takes place before the movie and explains some stuff in it, which it literally only explains like, Nightcrawler was like, hey, I kind of just got to go. So he leaves. But it was set before the actual third movie, but it's like, hey, it's X-Men 3, the movie game. And it's like, well, it's not, but it's a weird tie-in situation. So even when they have games that are meant to be tie-ins to the film, they're so drastically different. It ends up becoming like this really unique experience. Like, I would love to know, outside of, honestly, maybe Street Fighter, the movie, the game, I would love to know like what movie tie-in games are actually like really one-to-one. Like they could, none of them will ever be like one-to-one, but I would love to know like the percentage of unique stuff versus movie-based content, which one actually comes the closest. Because I think it will probably be Street Fighter, the movie, the game, and they probably just explain most of the story stuff that happens in the film through like, the ending arcade segments and stuff for different characters. But you play Spider-Man 1, there's a million different random things going on there. Like Shocker's in that. I think Scorpion's in that one. If not, he's in the second one, but I'm pretty sure he's in that one as well, or in the first game. Vulture, of course, is definitely in the first game. I'll never forget going up the clock tower. But there's so much unique content that it's like, how if you do like the actual percentage of this game versus the movie, and then Peter fighting Green Goblin and going through the motions of that sort of situation, what's going on there? And then Spider-Man 2 is even crazier. Like, there's so much stuff in Spider-Man 2, it's got to be like 10%, 20% of that game, maybe 25% is actually from Spider-Man 2. And then other than that, it's like they were just like, hey, let's just do some cool stuff. And which they did. I mean, it's Spider-Man 2, a magnificent game from back in the day. And then unfortunately, I didn't even mention Spider-Man 3 earlier because I wasn't talking about the crappy ones. Spider-Man 3 sucked. I hated that one when it came out. I was so annoyed by that. It looked like garbage. It took me a long time. I have no idea how many years. It took me a super long time to even know that game came out on PS3 because I had it for PS2. I didn't know that it was like I had the last gen port or whatever. I never knew that. I just assumed I had it on PS2 and that was it. But that's one of the funny things looking back at video games. God of War 2 came out and the PS3 was already out. So that's a crazy random thing that that gets referenced in videos every once in a while. I'm like, dang. That's a real fact. That's really crazy. I was playing God of War 2 still, and the PS3 was already out. But same with Spider-Man 3. Like the game looks super gross. Like I didn't understand it. It was that really weird thing where I think it was because they had next gen ports and stuff that they were trying to make the characters look smooth or whatever they were doing, but they looked ugly. And I was like, how does this look worse than the last game? Spider-Man 2 is amazing, and then Spider-Man 3 comes out and it's like, this is trash. Outside of the fact that you can switch to the symbiote costume, which, one of my favorite things in all the comics. So that's pretty neat. But other than that, it was like, ugh, this is ugly. And then it's not like it's the most amazing thing in the world anyway, even on, the later versions. I think everyone still says, like, Spider-Man 2 as a movie tie-in game still ends up being better than Spider-Man 3. But there's definitely been a lot, and I think we are potentially finally in the era, and it's been a minute, I'd say, at this point, where we don't have the same situation. At least we still have games that I feel like, hey, here's this game that definitely feels like a tie-in game, but it's totally different. It's 100% just, here are the characters, and it just happens to come out around this time, or it involves these characters and stuff, but they're not really tie-in games. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy game, that has nothing to do with the film. It's just those characters. But it's amazing. I hate that warning goes off so early, but I'm safe, don't worry. But by the way, play the Guardians of the Galaxy game. Buy that game. It's super cheap at this point. That game is absolutely amazing. If it wasn't for the fact that the Avengers game came out before it, that game would have sold like crazy because that game is so good. And then it came out after the Marvel's Avengers game, which did not do so great. So, an unfortunate circumstance of the thing before it kind of tainted it, where people were just like, yeah, we're not going to do that. But the Guardians game is absolutely amazing. Like, I love that game. Is so good. It's hilarious too. Like, they did a great job. The music is good. Like, they do all the stuff that's kind of become, the norm of the films because of the movies, of course. But the music that they choose is great. The comedy is really good. The characters are cool. You can do like all sorts of different costumes from throughout the comics and stuff like that. So it's great. So definitely pick up that game. I know everyone that talks about it always says that. So I'll add to the pile. The game is phenomenal. And you can play through it more than once because you get multiple options to do certain things. Like there's literally a character that I never even got to experience in the game except for a glitch. Like he was just randomly on my ship, which happened to some other people too. And I was like, I have no idea who this guy is. And then I never saw him again in the game. And I was like, oh, that must have been from one of the options. I just assumed that he popped up too early and it was a glitch, but it was like, no, whatever I did in the game, I never saw that guy again. So I was like, I don't know who he is or what the story is behind it, but clearly my choices led to me never meeting that guy. So there's stuff that can happen in that game where like you'll have some really different experiences. So I highly recommend that game. It's super fun. But that wasn't like a movie tie-in thing. The Marvel's Avengers thing was exactly the same. And of course that was hit with a lot of conversation at the time where it was like, oh, okay, it's Avengers, but it's not like the movie Avengers and stuff like that. And I don't think any of that would have mattered if they just focused on it being a single player game. And I have that game, but I still haven't played it. But I was always curious. Everyone says the same thing too. Like the story's pretty decent. It might not be the best thing ever, but it's like the story's pretty good. They should have just stuck with that. Just a good single player. Even if you make it multiplayer, I mean, you could easily do that. You got so many characters. Make it a multiplayer co-op, just a story game. Like, don't make it all of these stupid live service things. Just make it a really good co-op story game. You can do that and have like 5 characters or, 4 or 5 characters in a co-op situation, but it's just all story based. They could have done it, but they chose to do what they did. So that's kind of where we are with that. And I'd say those 2 games are really like the last ones that are even kind of close to just being like full on tie-ins. Like, I mean, we had God, it's been so long since we've really had like straight up movie tie-in games. All I can think of is like Amazing Spider-Man 2, because we haven't had one for the MCU in an incredibly long time. I mean, honestly, I think maybe Iron Man 2 might have been legit like the last one. I don't think they had any after that. I know obviously they didn't make an actual Avengers game. There was the Captain America game, which that's another one that people actually said was pretty decent back in the day. I never played that one myself, but people said it was like, okay, it's like a, a 3-4 out of 5 type of thing. And people said it was actually kind of fun. So, we've had that. DC pretty much hasn't had anything. I mean, it's not like they really had that many movies anyway, but they haven't had anything since Batman Begins, if I'm not mistaken, as far as like actual tie-in stuff. So, maybe, like I said, we'll see what happens when they pick that back up and the universe, restarts and they make some decisions there. But we'll see. We'll see. I think we are past that era of the movie tie-in. I think for multiple reasons. For one, the games always sucked, so they never really sold unless it was just like, a rare godsend. Like I said, the X-Men Origins Wolverine, Spider-Man, 2 out of 3 times. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. If we're being honest, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That first Spider-Man movie game is really good and is also one of my favorites. Oh, I never mentioned that during like unlockables and cheat codes and stuff. I didn't even think about that, but that first game has so many unlockables, it's insane. Wow, I can't believe I forgot to mention that, because that game is also one of the only other games I ever played where you can unlock a brand new character, because you can play as the Green Goblin in that, and I love that. I will put in the cheat code for like unlimited. It was for webbing, but for Green Goblin, it was for like the glider and using grenades and stuff. That was pretty much the substitute for webbing, and you put in like basically infinite energy, and then you could just use bombs and stuff. He had super speed, which is, I'm a huge sucker for super speed. Plus, you could run at super speed and just run into people and just send them flying back. I love playing as the Green Goblin back in the day. And they even did like new content. Like, it was technically meant to be like, it was a new story. You go through the same missions, but the dialogue was different. And it was really cool. It was like such a unique thing for them to do, to put that much effort in, and a brand new character that you could play as. And then of course they had costumes and stuff. But the first 2 Spider-Man games were really good. X-Men Origins was really good. Like I said, I heard the Cap game was pretty decent. But I think it's fortunate that we're past that era. 100%. It's definitely fortunate, because we have, especially because it was always so many comic book things. I mean, that's, it wasn't, like I said, it's not going to be like Eyes Wide Shut or anything crazy. But there have been other properties. Warriors is a great example. Back to the Future is another great example. That was Telltale Games' first game, was the Back to the Future one that they did. And it's a phenomenal game. Like, that is, if anything is considered like a 4th Back to the Future, it's that video game, which you can, if you don't want to play that game, you can pick up the comics, which I don't know if that's more enticing or less enticing, but the story that they do in the game, they eventually did put into the comic books when they created the comic series, and it was so popular that they were like, okay, we'll just make a long comic series. And then they eventually rolled in all the stuff from the Telltale games into the comic books. So you can experience that, and it really is good. It's legit like a Back to the Future Part 4. And it's fantastic. I love that. And they even end on a to be continued, and I was super pissed, because I was like, oh, they never did that, huh? That hurt my feelings. So, but that was really fun. Like, I thought that was a great game, and that was something that, once again, a super old franchise at that point, obviously still huge, incredibly popular. It's nothing like the Warriors, which was a cult classic at the time. Back to the Future has always been popular, so it was like, still shocking, but a more popular franchise. And then they're like, hey, what if we made, legit, basically a Back to the Future Part 4? And they did a great job with that. And I like I said, I really love that game. Highly recommend it. If you're a Back to the Future fan, if you've never experienced it, highly recommend that game. Or like I said, the comics. I don't know exactly which issues, but it's like way later in the comics where they redo that. So it's up to you, but it's out there. There is a Back to the Future Part 4, and it's fantastic. But that was a really good one. And then you got kind of the rest. I heard Amazing Spider-Man 1 was actually good, and then they crapped the bed with that second game. It's all I ever hear. It's like, the first one, yeah, that's pretty decent. It does this, and this. It's not too bad. And then everyone's like, but that second one, what the F? And then that's just how it goes. So that's an unfortunate turn of events with that game, considering the first one actually had a good job, which most of the time when that happens, it's because of the fact that they have to release it when the movie comes out. It's never like, oh, these developers are trash. It's always the fact that they're like, this has to come out right now. And it's like, well, we don't have time. It comes out right now. And then that's just what they have to do. They have no choice. Sometimes they have enough time to make it happen. A lot of times they didn't. and that's really unfortunate. But it's the deadlines. I mean, heck, there's tons of video games that come out where it has nothing to do with tie-ins, and the reason it sucks is because they were forced to put it out. I mean, Cyberpunk is the perfect example of that. As far as like more recent things, it was like they were forced to put that game out, and they knew it was not 100% ready yet, but they had no choice, and that's just unfortunate. That's an unfortunate side of kind of the gaming ecosystem. And it doesn't just have to be a movie tie-in situation, or even tied to a TV show or anything like that. It's just how it is sometimes. But when it comes to adaptations, there are those rare few that are worth talking about. X-Men Origins, especially because the movie was so crappy. It's amazing how phenomenal that game truly is, and it has some crazy references. They have references to Lost in there. You can find like the Throne of the Lich King from World of Warcraft. So they put some silly stuff in there too, and it's definitely a fun game. But I would love to know your thoughts on adaptations and stuff like that, like, movie-based games. Like, are there movie-based games that you guys love? Even if they're ones that people typically hate, I would love to hear, like, what memories you guys have. Because for me, of course, the first two Spider-Man games are, like, fantastic memories for me, playing the crap out of the first game. I mean, literally, they had bowling as an extra mode inside of the first Spider-Man game, and you could play 4 players. And because they had so many costumes in the game, each player would have a different costume, because that's how many costumes were in the game. You could actually have different outfits for different players. So stuff like that is super fun. Spider-Man 2 was just really, really good. And of course, having Bruce Campbell do all his silly stuff is great, especially, being a huge Evil Dead fan. I wasn't as much when I was a kid. I didn't even know about Evil Dead, but now I'm a huge Evil Dead fan, so I like Sam Raimi stuff even more. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize that the funny dude was Bruce Campbell. Like, I made that connection later in life, and it was like, oh, that makes me appreciate that even more, from like a weird nostalgic sense, where it's like I didn't even know that at the time, but now I can look back on it and appreciate it even more so than I did back then, because it was already funny. Like, those games were pretty funny with the tutorial stuff. But I would love to know your favorite or least favorite adaptations, your thoughts on adaptations, and are we officially done with that? Because unless I'm mistaken, and it's definitely possible, and it's certainly on a much smaller scale. Like, we do still get some stuff. I know Cobra Kai had some games, so I know TV show wise we still get some stuff here and there. And Cobra Kai, of course, being an action show, it should get it. The game was admittedly kind of cheap from what I saw, but it was out there, and it was like, it does kind of track that they would have that. And of course, there's a lot of TV shows, specifically like on the kids side of things. I don't think we'll ever stop when it comes to adaptations, video game adaptations of TV shows, because you'll always have something that's done for kids. So it'll be either like kiddie action games, or it'll just straight up be like, hey, it's just like a learning game. So technically speaking, that does count. So I don't think that'll ever stop. But when it comes to movie-based games, movie tie-in games, I think that era's over, which I think is definitely for the best. I don't think we really need that at all, unless the movie just oddly translates. You can do a good action movie. I mean, obviously The Matrix was another one that I almost forgot about, but that's a pretty good example. They did that, and I mentioned before, I want those to come back. I want them to remake the Path of Neo game as an adaptation. But I would love to know your thoughts. Adaptations, movies, or TV shows as well. I would love to know like some of your favorites out there. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.